Hi YouTube, I just wanted to do another DVD update. Now, like I said, I'm going to try and keep this channel as updated as possible, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not even in the mood to do this right now. It's my only day off, and I've bought a lot of stuff since the last video, and it's going to be probably a long video if I do just what I have, so I better get in the mood. DVD, a 2-disc collection of A Fish Called Wanda, the classic 1980s comedy, yeah, 88, you know, it's a classic. If you've never seen it, it's good, it's great. It's kind of the one of the main movies that made Kevin Kline a star and broke Jamie Lee Curtis out of her like post-Halloween era. But yeah, this is a great movie, and I was glad I got it. From a friend of mine, I got Before Sunrise, which is Before Sunset, which is the sequel to Before Sunrise, though it came quite a bit later. I think it was a good 7-year gap between these movies, 5 to 7 year gap between those movies, and the stars Ethan Hawke and Julie Dempsey, and it's directed by Richard Linklater, takes place in France, and you know, if you've ever seen these movies, they're pretty much conversation movies. They don't really have a lot of plot in them. Actually, to be fair, I've never seen either of them, but I have them both now, and I'm a big Linklater fan, so I'll definitely be watching these here soon. After the holiday, I went to a local town where there's a lot of used DVDs and DVDs and CDs and stuff like that. I don't buy CDs anymore, who does? But I do buy used DVDs quite a bit, and I was able to get some good deals here on some buy one, get one for free at a store called Hastings, which my co-host Christopher works at. And there I got Light the Right One In, the Swedish vampire film, starring, you know, children. It was later remade something like 2 or 3 years later in America as Let Me In with Chloe Moretz from Kick-Ass. I've seen both. I think this one is quite a bit better in my opinion. I think this one's a little bit more subtle. I like the cinematography of this one a little bit more. It's much colder and more wintry kind of atmosphere. In general, I just think this one just subverts that genre a little bit better than Let Me In does. But if you've never seen either, they're both fairly good, but I think Let the Right One In is just a little bit better, in my opinion. I also got Already a Brother, which came out this year, and in my opinion, this is a very underrated comedy this year. I think a lot of people kind of were underwhelmed by this movie or didn't really know what to think about it because it's not, I guess it's not like a raunchy sort of Judd Apatow sort of comedy, even though it has some of his sort of cast members like Paul Rudd and Elizabeth Banks, and Zooey Deschanel's in here too, Emily Mortimer, and it's this funny movie about a kind of a hippie stoner guy and his 3 sisters, and he's sort of bouncing from home to home between them after he's been released from jail for accidentally selling weed to a cop. And it's not a stoner comedy though, as what I'm describing would make it sound like. It's very much a character-based comedy, and it's almost in a way sort of a dramedy. I think the comedy stakes aren't very high, but for some reason I sort of like that more. I'm kind of getting sick of comedies where it's just like, you know, by the 3rd act there's like cars flipping over and there's like babies being hung upside down from the ceiling, and you know what I mean? It's just like, just make me laugh. You don't have to raise the stakes so high. The comedy doesn't have to be that ridiculous. And I kind of like that there's a somewhat of a realistic feeling here, and sort of just a character dialogue based comedy, and I think it's actually pretty quirky and funny. This movie I actually ordered offline. I've been meaning to do so for quite a while, and I just finally got around to it. I got it on Amazon for fairly cheap, I think under $10, and it is a cool little indie dramedy called The Puffy Chair. If you've never seen it, you should. This came out something like 2005, I believe, and it's no real famous people, and it's directed by Jay and Mark Duplass, who would later go on to direct another little film called Baghead, and the Jonah Hill John C. Reilly comedy Cyrus that was released last year. This was their first movie, extremely low budget, and a lot of the dialogue, as well as in Cyrus and Baghead, is improvised by the actors. The scenes are kind of set up and told how the scenes are supposed to go from point A to point B, but the actors kind of fill in the dialogue naturalistically. And I've seen a lot of these types of movies, and I think this one is probably the best example of it. I think actually that sort of genre, it's being called mumblecore. Some of those movies can actually be really, really terrible, but I like this one a lot, and I think it's a kind of a sweet little heartfelt kind of breakup movie. So that's all I have on DVD, so I'll go ahead and talk about what I got on Blu-ray. At Best Buy for about $50, which is $50 less than it normally costs, I was able to finally purchase the Lord of the Rings Blu-ray box set, which is pretty spectacular. It's all 3 extended editions, like the original set, the big novel-looking set that had like the big book-size thing. This is like half the size of that one, and really took some weight off of my shelf when I was able to get rid of the DVD set. But this looks pretty nice. It held together with a magnet, I think, which is, you know, that's cool. And comes with all 3 films. I'm sure a lot of these DVD updates have shown this already, but you know, it's pretty sexy, I have to say. I like the gold tint to everything. It's nice. I haven't watched these yet, so I don't know. I mean, I've seen the movies, obviously, but I haven't watched them on Blu-ray yet, so I don't know how the quality differs, really. I'm sure it's quite a bit better, but I've heard good things from friends who've already bought this, and that this was worth upgrading to Blu-ray. So we will see soon how true that is. Alright. And another couple Blu-rays I got for cheap, used, from the same store that I got the other ones at Hastings. I got the Blu-ray of Time Bandits, the Terry Gilliam fantasy family movie from the 80s. It's pretty great. This is one of the first things he did after working with Monty Python, and kind of broke out into his own as a director. It's really good. It's part of his Imagination trilogy, which begins with this, goes into Brazil, which is one of my favorite science fiction movies, and then lastly with The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And if you like those 2 movies or anything else by Gilliam, really, this is definitely one to own. Really good special effects, practical special effects from the 80s, and just a huge imagination in this movie. This is a movie that divided a lot of people. A lot of people I know personally hated this movie, and I actually, it's kind of like Sofia Coppola's Somewhere, where the first time I saw it I wasn't really sure what to think about it, but the more I thought about it, the more and more I liked it, and I'm kind of actually excited to revisit it. And that's George Clooney's The American, directed by Anton Corbijn, who did Control, the Joy Division movie. And I like it's an interesting movie. It's a slow building suspense thriller about George Clooney. He's an assassin living in Italy, and while he's there lying low, he's being tempted by a prostitute, and simultaneously he's building this gun for a hit that somebody else is going to be making. And of course all this kind of comes to a head, but it's a very slow moving, very quiet, almost no dialogue, very little dialogue, almost no action set pieces or anything like that. It's all about atmosphere and tension, and for that I think it's actually pretty great. The cinematography is beautiful. The cityscapes of Italy looks very, very nice. George Clooney does a really good job of kind of underplaying the usual Clooney sort of style, and I'd say it's definitely worth putting in your collection if you're into this kind of stuff. If you know who Antonioni is, Michelangelo Antonioni, the famous director from the Italian director from the 60s and 70s and 50s. This movie is very much kind of an homage film to that, especially if you've seen The Passenger with Jack Nicholson. It's very similar in style and tone. But yeah, it's a pretty cool movie. And lastly, from that little set of stuff I was able to get used, I got Superman, the motion picture. Superman the movie, starring Christopher Reeves, directed by Richard Donner. And this is actually a movie I've never owned before, even though I've seen this movie a million times. This is probably one of the first superhero movies that I've ever seen, as well as, well, I guess the world, because there really wasn't superhero movies before this movie. And you know, it dates a little. Some of the flying effects that the movie's sort of obsessed with are not as spectacular looking now as they must have been then, but they actually still hold up pretty well. And I love this movie more for the first half of the movie, when it's talking about Jor-El and Krypton, and yeah, Marlon Brando in there, kind of doing a late role. And he gets sent to Earth and is being raised in Smallville. There's this whole kind of realism to that section of the movie. And then when they get into Metropolis and they introduce Margot Kidder and Gene Hackman and all that stuff, it becomes significantly less interesting when he actually becomes Superman. But it's actually, it still pretty much holds up. I mean, there's a reason why this movie is still, in some regards, the model for what superhero movies should be. It's still pretty satisfying, though I think the ending is pretty cheesy. But yeah, Richard Donner's Superman, get some. Okay, and lastly are three movies, newer movies that I've gotten. And one of them is a re-release, and something that I replaced in my collection, so I'll show that one first. And that is the 40-Year-Old Virgin on Blu Ray. It looks like Universal is going to be doing this 100th anniversary line this year, so keep an eye out for that, definitely. There's some ads in here for some pretty exciting stuff that's coming up. And they're showing here ad for E.T. and Jaws and other Universal movies that'll be being re-released on Blu-ray this year, so I'm definitely going to be getting those two on Blu-ray. But one of the things that got me to buy this Blu-ray, even though I already owned it on DVD, was that I owned the DVD full screen. Now, I am sort of a full screen, widescreen purist, sort of nut. I never buy full screen. I try not to as much as possible. But I actually bought the full screen edition of the 40-Year-Old Virgin on DVD because the only way you could get it widescreen is if it was the unrated cut. And I didn't want the unrated cut. I've seen both. I prefer the theatrical cut. These Judd Apatow comedies tend to go a little long as it is. We don't need 17 more scenes of the actors just kind of improvising. Superfluous kind of jokes that just kind of go on and on and on. I actually think that the theatrical cut cuts quite a bit better. So I did it. I got the full screen DVD, and it plagued me. It haunted me, knowing that there was a full screen DVD sitting back here in my collection. And nice as it is, I looked on here. It says includes both the unrated and the theatrical cut. Well, what a novel idea. Why couldn't you do that in the special edition DVD? So there it is. I felt much better after this. It was a relief, a breath of fresh air, once I was able to take that damned full-screen DVD out of my collection and be able to put this in there and know that I have both cuts if I were to ever want to watch the unrated cut, which I'll never ever actually watch. And lastly, is two movies that are pretty new, actually. These are new releases, just came out on DVD fairly recently ago. One of them I had to order on Amazon because in my town I couldn't find it. And that is the movie Beginners, which, you know, keep your eye out for this movie during the awards season. You're going to be seeing this name pop up a lot. It's already been nominated for an Independent Spirit Award. Possibly, I think it's been nominated for a few things in the Golden Globes. I think Christopher Plummer has been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and he very well might win. And I think he's going to be nominated for the Oscar as well, and probably might win that as well. This is a movie about, sort of semi-autobiographical from the writer-director Mike Mills, with Ewan McGregor, and he's kind of playing this lonely guy who's just lost both his mother and his father, and the mother died first, and left the father alone, and when at an old age, I mean, you know, Christopher Plummer's playing him, so he's playing someone who's in his late 70s or so, and at that age tells his whole family after the mother's died that he's actually gay. He's been gay his whole life, and his mother knew, and he was just never able to really express that because he didn't want to break her heart. And so he's kind of living the rest of his fairly short amount of life left with this new outlook and this new experience, and but it's being told through the perspective of Ewan McGregor, who is trying to find love as well through this character played by Melanie Laurent, the French actress who was from Inglourious Bastards. If you saw that, she was the blonde one with the movie theater. And it's a great movie. It's one of my favorites of the year. I watched this movie, and I loved it. In a few days passing after thinking about it, I loved it even more. And I really, really think everybody in this movie, including Christopher Plummer, is just terrific. That was kind of a long review for that. And lastly is another movie that came out this year that I loved to death, and I was excited for it to come out on Blu-ray because I think it's going to look really nice. Even though it's not an action movie, it's not a special effects movie, I think the cinematography is going to just really glow in Blu-ray, and that is Moneyball, starring Brad Pitt. And this is kind of cool. This is a 3-disc combo pack. It comes with the Blu-ray, the DVD, the digital combo, all that jazz, and it has this whole UV thing, ultraviolet thing. The streaming cloud, I don't really know what any of that is because I don't really care about digital copies. I like to watch my stuff on disc still, and I don't have an iPad or any of that junk, so I'm fine with just having the Blu-ray, but I like, you know, extras are nice, and it was fairly cheap. I mean, you know, $25 or whatever for the whole set, which isn't bad, but I don't know, for some reason it makes me a little happy when it's just a little bit thicker than you usually get. And yeah, you know, the discs and all that stuff, and I'm excited to watch this again on Blu-ray. I think I'm going to watch it with my dad because he's a big baseball nut, and I'm not, actually. I'm not a big sports fan. I never have been. I'm a movie nerd. Just a nerd in general, and I'm not good at sports. But this movie actually made me care about it, and it's a really good character-based drama. I think, again, it's going to be another big contender at the Oscars and the Golden Globes. I think we'll see definitely Brad Pitt get a lot of nominations. This was shot by Wally Pfister, who often works with Christopher Nolan, who shot Inception and The Dark Knight and Memento, blah, blah, blah. So he's a great cinematographer, and like I said, it looks really nice. The acting is really nice. The score is really well thought. And it's co-written by Aaron Sorkin, who, of course, wrote The Social Network and The West Wing. So it's just a great movie with a really fantastic pedigree. So there you have it. Those are all the movies I've recently purchased, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you really liked it a lot, you could subscribe. And if you liked it even more, you could share it with all your friends, because this is a new channel and I don't have a lot of subscribers. Alright, see you later.